felt it would give us the best access to the strongest possible group of senior insurance decision makers.
Insurtech Insights is a must-do conference, I think, for the network that is built here.
Thank you so much. Welcome, guys. I know this is a late afternoon session, so I really do appreciate you being here. Welcome to our panel. It is called Using the Ecosystem to Accelerate Speed to Launch, a real-world example. And today with me, I have the pleasure of having one of our customers at Socotra called Ledgebrook. And they're going to guide us through how they launched in less than a year for an insurance startup that specializes in E&S. And it's a modern tech-forward specialty company. Hello. I'm excited to get a three-dimensional view with everyone here today. And so joining me on stage is Gage Caligraris, who is the founder and CEO, Nathan Hall, who is our CTO, or Ledgebrook CTO, and then Adrian Copland, who's the COO. Awesome. And then to kick us off, let's start off with some introductions.
Great. Thanks, Irene. I'll start. So Gage Caligraris, founder and CEO, Ledgebrook. My background is as an actuary. So I was a math guy coming out of school. I used that for a couple of years to actually trade derivatives on Wall Street, if you can believe that. But then as I was looking to settle down, I kind of backed into the insurance industry the way a lot of people do, in that I wanted to be in Boston near my in-laws. And so my younger sister was becoming an actuary herself at Travelers at the time, and so that's how I kind of found out about it. Liberty Mutual had the biggest program in the world, and so, 1 + 1 was 2, and the rest is history. From there, I did my exams, managed pricing teams, and then the last role I had was leading the internal incubator, the mobility business, which we were able to scale from about 40 million in premium to almost 500, circa 18 months, launched multiple new products. And so that was really kind of the final capstone experience of my Liberty career that led me to founding Ledgebrook today.
I'm Nathan Hall. My background's a little different. I actually started in finance and accounting. Did capital markets accounting advisory, which is just as boring as it sounds. And I actually call my CPA. I have one. I don't tell anybody. I call it my scarlet letter. But I always wanted to get back into programming because I'd done that from a pretty young age. And so I was in healthcare after that for about the better part of a decade, and it was a company. When I started, we had about 10 developers, and by the time I left, we had 200 and 2,000 employees and went public. And the vast majority of that was spent building out the API ecosystem for a lot of the acquisitions that we did. So I found that if you really didn't have that underlying data model standardized across all the different products, that the integration didn't go very well. So that was for most of a decade, and I spent the last few years at a fintech company before meeting Gage.
Hi, Adrian Copland. I'm the COO. Every time I hear somebody else's introduction, I always feel a little bit more humble. So yeah, I've worked in the insurance industry for the last 15 years. Before that, was a management consultant. Did some work with Dr. Pepper 7-Up over in Texas. That was kind of the highlight of my management consultancy career. Joined Catlin in 2009, which was a relatively small organization at the time. That then got bought by Excel, big US organization, eventually got bought by AXA. I guess the moment that led me to Ledgebrook was we set up an operation unit in Poland. I lived in Poland for 5 years. I was employee number 1 with a laptop in a Regus building, trying to work out how to set up a business in Poland. So quite a great experience. When I left that operation 5 years later, it was 475 people. So a lot of recruitment, a lot of things learned about operations. And then made the jump 2 or 3 years ago out of what was AXA Excel into the startup world. Went to join another startup, did a couple of years there, and then post Series A left, and now excited to be here at Ledgebrook.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I feel like I learned more stuff about you even just through these introductions, so thank you. So let's get into some questions, and maybe the first question is why Ledgebrook, right? So maybe Gage, we'll start with you. Can you share what prompted you to start the company, and then some insight into your vision?
Sure thing. So what prompted me to start the company was really after I had my first child and COVID was here. I did a little bit of soul searching about what do I want to do with the rest of my life. And the answer I came up with was just 2 things. I wanted to be a great husband and father, and I wanted to build something. Full stop. And so what that led to was me, when I got back from paternity leave, joining that mobility business to lead that within the Liberty mothership that I love so much. And then from there, I think before I did that, I thought something like starting an insurance company was just too big. It was too grand. How would anyone do that? There's so many things, claims, underwriting, pricing, all of these sales. It seemed too big. But then kind of building multiple products from the ground up, de novo insurance products, selling those, scaling with our largest partners, it seemed a lot more approachable. So how that turned into Ledgebrook was I started thinking, oh, maybe I can do this, but what could I really offer the world? What am I good at? And for me, that was, okay, I've got this kind of high-powered background, entrepreneurial, data, tech, all that, but then also insurance insider status as an actuary. So let's combine those two, and let's go to maybe the more inside baseball, more backwater parts of the insurance industry that aren't as accessible to outsiders, with the value prop of bringing both the best of modern technology and the best of insurance expertise to bear. And so that, with that thesis in mind, that's what became Ledgebrook, and we're starting as, we have big visions, of course, but starting life as an E&S MGA, that's a less loved part of the industry. That's kind of how that all came together.
Awesome. Great. And then for Nathan, I think one of the things I learned about was that as joining as the CTO of Ledgebrook, there were certain decisions already made in that ecosystem, including choosing Socotra. So maybe a question for you is, what was it like jumping in and some of the key decisions you had to make when you first joined as a CTO?
Sure. So I joined back in October, and the first thing they said was, we're going to go live November 1st. I'm like, that's great. Let's see the product. And it wasn't there. And I was like, that's great. Let's see the product requirement document. And that was not there either. So there were some hurdles to get over to start out that we got over pretty quickly. We had the rating algorithm set up and the API calls to do that. And we had a few of the other things. We partnered with Federato to do the UI. And we partnered with Socotra to get stood up too, and that actually came together very quickly. Because, like I mentioned earlier, things that I think make or break a lot of these is having like a very well-defined open API documentation set and this nice data model that you can just build on top of. And so, after getting past that initial requirements hurdle, we were able to actually stand up the product in 3 months from the software perspective, and that was.
Awesome. Yeah. And in case someone in the crowd is interested, do you mind sharing your tech stack?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we are an AWS shop. Socotra's self-hosted on there with their API, their MySQL data mart. And then for us personally, we have our data analytics, data warehouse, data lake on AWS Redshift with MySQL as well, and then we use Federato on the front end, and we have a bunch of ETL pipelines that are more Lambda-based.
Awesome. Great. And Adrian, I think when you started as a COO, what were your primary goals that you wanted to tackle from an operational point of view?
First, to try and understand what Nathan just said, which I still have no idea. Lots of good acronyms, though. Well done. I think this is the third time I've scaled something, and I think we often talk about, it's really easy to talk about product, customer, technology, without thinking about all the stuff that goes underneath that to build a company. And I think for me, first of all, we had to think about insurance operations. So how do you support the underwriters to allow them to make great decisions, but build it so you can scale it, right? And I think certainly when I was at AXA, we were actually, for all of some of the things we found difficult, actually one of the things we were very good at was scaling operations, building things that could, just keep plugging in new products, new geographic regions into an operational unit so you could scale that. In order to do that, you need to attract and retain talent. And I think it's kind of a lazy phrase to use, war for talent, but you've definitely got to be able to create somewhere where people want to come and work. And that's hard when people are leaving jobs in the insurance industry that are often highly paid, lots of security, lots of long-term incentives to stay there. So how do you create an environment where you can attract and retain talent? So I saw that kind of as a real driver of what I was asked to do. And then third, you just got to get some of the basics right. Have you got a finance team? Have you got a HR team? Are you regulatory approved from a HR perspective? How can you just, can you onboard somebody in a way that wows them and wants them to stay? So I think they're the three things that are priority that I kind of see when I came into Ledgebrook.
Agree. Love to work for somewhere where it's like, what makes it important for you to want to stay here and not go anywhere else? Gage, you talked about how it seemed impossible wanting to start your own insurance company, and so I'm curious, when you think about starting from the ground up, which you did, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, maybe focusing on, like, I think a lot of people are going through this right now and starting companies like the VCs and the reinsurance, and what were some of those challenges and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many steps in starting an MGA, both from a regulatory perspective, a funding perspective, and a reinsurance perspective. And, really like anything else, you just have to tackle them one at a time. You have to just break down this big, hairy problem into a variety of steps that you can do one after the other. And so for me, after fleshing out the idea and taking the pitch deck to VCs, that actually came together pretty quickly.
Nice.
But then there were other parts that took a lot longer than I might have thought. So I had to get my licenses. I had to go take some tests. And then we had to employ a small army of lawyers to go get us registered in all 50 states and then go get fingerprinted in different ways, all this kind of stuff. But we were able to do that while we were creating some of the other, creating the product itself and hiring the folks out to underwrite it and talking to reinsurers. So we're kind of building the plane as we're trying to get it off the ground in a variety of parallel paths and hoping that they all came together at the same time, which...
They did.
Yeah, they did. They got it.
They did. Awesome. Since this panel is about accelerating speed to launch, maybe for you, Nathan, what kind of technological innovations or advancements did you implement at Ledgebrook, during your short tenure there?
Yeah. There's been quite a few, and it's been pretty easy because it's been a lot of plug and play. Mm-hmm. So, I think a good recent example is our one of our actuaries, I guess our only actuary if you don't include you, came and he came to me and he said, I've been playing with ChatGPT a little bit, and I've been actually getting it to do classifications by just giving it, for NICS codes, for just giving it like an address and the company name. I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So we actually turned around, we trained our own LLM, and we got that plus business description, hours of operation, business summary of services, a bunch of other things that we plug in and gave to the underwriters, and we got that in production in 2 weeks. So it's that sort of speed that we have that, thanks to Socotra and Federado and a lot of other things, we're able to turn around pretty quickly.
Awesome. And in what ways does the ecosystem affect, the operational side, Adrian, would you say?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of frustrated people. A lot of my ex-colleagues, frustrated people sitting within large insurance companies who want the opportunity to work with new technology, want the opportunity to come to conferences like this and actually buy the product and actually use it And certainly, if I think of like setting up an insurance company, I often thought about it like, what would you do if you just started from scratch? Would you like just kind of built your perfect insurance company? And I always talk about, can you build the perfect value chain? So take all of these technologies that are out here, plug them all together and say, actually, we're just going to be marginally better everywhere in the value chain. Rather than say, I'm just going to be really good at claims, or I'm really good at underwriting, or I'm really good at submission flow. I'm just going to be brilliant everywhere. And I think creating using something like Socotra, Federato, creating an architecture that allows you to build that world-class value chain from start to finish is a hugely exciting opportunity. And genuinely, Gage and I, when we were kind of dating during the interview stage, that's often what we kind of completely agree, that it's like you can build like an insurance company from the ground up and just be marginally better everywhere. So the ecosystem allows us to do that. It allows us to do it at speed. It's like 9 months since Gage started this process, and some of the stuff Nathan's talking. So I think that enablement of speed is clearly there.
Awesome. I think one of the themes of this conference, as well as all the other Insurtech conferences that we go to, is really like data and analytics and pulling that to view metrics, right? And so I'm always curious, like, because we have all three of you on stage, like, what metrics are you looking at and what are you tracking now that you're live? And maybe we'll start with you and then go down the line.
Yeah, metrics question for the actuary. So that's one of the big benefits that we've seen with Socotra is the ability to set up the data model correctly from the jump so that we can actually get all the metrics we want to see out immediately and then iterate as well. The flexibility is key. And so for us right now, being early days, submission flow and the funnel analysis is everything. And so we're able to track and capture every single one of 15, 20, 25, I don't even know how many reasons there are that something might fall out of the flow. Is it the wrong class code? Is it the right class code, but there's an ancillary class code that's wrong? Wrong state, wrong size of all these different things. Is the pricing off market? We're able to have that stood up from day one. And so when I kind of talk to some of our investors and they say, how are you doing? Or mentors, and they say, what are we looking at? I can just throw these dashboards up and I can't believe you have this. So how long did this take you to build? Actually, it was very quick because the underlying foundation is done appropriately. And it sounds easier than it is when I say that, but working with the best tools is something that allows us to have those real-time insights that helps us iterate faster and serve our brokers better.
Awesome. Adrian, anything from the technological side? Sorry,
Sure.
Nathan.
That's fine.
Don't ask me to get that.
Trick question.
Yeah, so a lot of the data is coming from the Socotra data mart, which we pipe into our own data warehouse, and then we do some transformations on it to get a lot of these submission flows, submission metrics. We're using Power BI to show them off and make them all flashy and nice. But a lot of the things we're tracking, like how many have come in, how many have been cleared, how long did it take something to go from cleared to rated, and rated to quoted, and quoted to bound, and all those fun things. And yeah, it's been a breath of fresh air to make it pretty easy to get done too.
Well, I think Nathan stole most of my thunder around insurance operations. From an insurance operations perspective, I spent my whole career trying to make sure you're optimizing from a measurement perspective on all the things we're talking, quote to bind, how long things take to clear. We talk a lot about time to competence, how long does it take to get people up to speed. So I think from an operations perspective, we do nothing but measure, because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I know that sounds a bit cheesy from a Brit, but it's like that's just how I feel about it. But I think it's also important to be measuring the intangibles, not the intangibles, the other parts of your business. Like how quickly does it take you to close your books from a finance perspective? It shouldn't, we're a relatively small company. We need to set the bar high that we can close our books for our investors very, very quickly. What do our staff think about us, even though we're only 17? So how do we often get how do we run ability to kind of ask what our staff want and how we're thinking about it? So from a HR perspective, I spend a lot of time thinking about the staff that we've got, and then you look at it from a recruitment perspective. I think from a how many interviews did we do? How many times did we out of those interviews? How many offers did we take out of it? So we just get better at targeting from a HR perspective. So even for a non-actuary, I like to measure stuff, but I don't get in a debate about the numbers with Gage. I just kind of nod at him when he tells me things.
It's not a winning debate. No.
I like hearing all the different perspectives and all the different priorities. So maybe next question is, what's next? Like how do you guys think about, now that Ledgebrook is up and running, how do you think about scalability and what's next and what's like top of priority based on your expertise?
It's a great question. So scalability of product one, the underwriters have that in hand. We're going to enable them with metrics and try to improve that system. But the day after our treaty went live, we started recruiting for our next two products. And the job postings went up at the end of that week. And we're moving forward, and we're going to hopefully have folks in by the end of this month or shortly thereafter. So we want to scale both organically and by launching new products. And one of the great things about Socotra is that it enables you to do that. We can build on top of a strong foundation, and we can tweak it, right? It's different forms, it's different rating logic, sure, but it all sits on the same tech stack. And so when we're doing these interviews and people ask us about how long did it take you to actually set this up, does it actually work, we can confidently say yes, and we can show them what we're doing, and folks have been very impressed with that. So having the technology be an enabler to launching the product is something that we're doing. And so hopefully have those up and running by the end of the year, if not sooner.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I think from the tech perspective, the two things that I'm focused on from scalability, or like you started with, is being able to add new product lines quickly and efficiently. So a lot of the stuff that we've already done is going to be reusable, but also we understand it a lot better. So, one of the metrics that we're definitely going to track is how long does it take to stand up. And, we've heard internally from Socotra that, one of the product lines we're about to go into, that the time to market for that was a month, which is amazing. So we're excited about that. And the other one is...
I'm like, who told you that? I'm kidding.
I'm not naming any names. But the other one is, from submissions, like being able to handle the volume. Right now we're doing middle market, but at some point, with the binding authority product, you're probably going to be getting a lot more. So it's thinking about how can we make sure that we handle that appropriately.
And I guess my job is for it not to break, very simply. I mean, I think the most important thing for me is to support the underwriters, support the tech guys in actually growing the book without moving the bottom line at the same pace, right? There's no point growing and then just adding loads of operational staff or loads of cost to the bottom line. So we've got to build processes that are scalable, both from an insurance operations perspective and an HR perspective and a finance perspective. And sorry, I sound a bit like a broken record, but you genuinely, in order to build this successful company, we can't just keep putting costs on the bottom line. We have to just get freaking good at it and be able to scale the front end without scaling the back end. So that's what I'm focused on. And I think there's lots of ways that young companies can learn from the big companies on how they do that. There are lots of companies out there that can support you, lots of good technologies to do that as well. But fundamentally, it's like scale the top end without putting a lot of cost on the bottom end, because then it makes your combined ratio a lot easier to talk about in a year or two's time if you haven't just exponentially added loads of cost to the bottom line.
What you guys did in less than a year is really, truly impressive. And just like hearing, even just the way that all three of you got together and getting to know you guys the past couple of weeks. So because maybe there are people here who want to start an MGA, what kind of advice would you give to those who are starting, who are looking to start? Yeah. Hello? Oh, okay. So yeah, so to kind of take us before we ask questions from the audience, I think what you guys did has been super impressive, and how you launched in a year, and even just the way that you guys got together, because I do see that camaraderie, and I can't believe you guys have been together, like working together even less than a year, right? So what advice do you have for people who want to start an MGA, and where to lean in and when to push back maybe?
Yeah, so it's definitely doable to start an MGA, but like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of processes. If I could tell I think that the biggest thing that I benefited from was really just deciding to do it with 100% certainty, without looking back, and so that every day when I wake up, I'm pushing the ball forward, regardless if we achieved a lot the day before or not. Just have a great attitude, try your best, be good to people, and then do it all over again. And so committing to it, you can figure it all out, right? But commit first and then go later.
Have a business requirements document. It's my main one. But in all seriousness, if you want to be a tech-enabled or a tech-forward MGA, you definitely need to find the right people that can help you. It doesn't necessarily have to be in-house, but between finding a good contracting arm or people like Socotra that are out there to help you be able to stand it up, it's paramount importance.
My answer is pretty simple. It's people. You got to want to do it. You got to have some fun. It's stressful. I did used to have hair before February, before I joined Ledgebrook, so it's been a very short process, my hairline. But no, just working with good people. Just honestly, you spend all your career, you spend a lot of time with these people, right? So starting an MGA, there's lots of people who have done it. There's lots of people who will support you, having a great network. But if you can find a group of people that you enjoy working with, that share the same vision, have the same purpose, then I think that makes it far easier. And certainly my advice would be do it. Anybody can, if you want to do it and you've got the conviction to do it, then it's a great way of showing the world that you can build an insurance company from the ground up. I remember when I first met Gage, he told me he was going to build the next Munich Re. And that's really easy to smile about, but then you look back at it. Munich restarted somewhere, right? Swiss restarted somewhere, and I firmly believe if you get the right team, get the right people around you, then there's loads of tech out there that you can buy and enable you, and there's loads of people that want to help and want to support you. So that would be my following up on Gage a little bit. You just want to do it, and then find a good team to surround you.
Yeah, I agree. I think even the vendor relationship between Socotra and Ledgebrook has been amazing, and you guys have been great to work with. And thank you again for doing this panel. Any questions from the audience that we can answer today before we let everyone enjoy the rest of their afternoon post-conference? Yeah?
I have a question you may not be able to answer publicly, but I find myself so curious as you're starting the MGA and you're moving so fast. What kind of runway do you see to profitability? Like, how quick, and maybe this is going too deep, but like how much gross written premium do you guys need to get, and how long do you think it'll take you to get enough brokers to hit that level where you're in the clear?
That's a great question, and I think the way I think about it in my mind, I think race to 100 million, right? If we have 100 million, we can support the amount of staff to do that. The other side of the question on the economics is that essentially we have to write profitable business from the jump, right? We're not kind of writing loss leaders that then we take rate later and kind of hope the economics get better over time. Yes, we're going to have to invest in the foundation. We're going to have bigger teams than we need to support a zero premium base. But as long as we're writing core insurance policies that are profitable themselves, we can kind of wait till we get to scale on the supporting functions.
I'd say the MGA economics get better as you get bigger, right? So it's tough the first time you go and get reinsurance. You're a startup. There's a startup tax. You've got no track history other than we've got Gage as an actuary, and we've got people that came, who are underwriters who have proved they've done it before. So in some sense, the question is quite difficult to answer because the economics today will even be different for our second product, right, from a reinsurance perspective, which will be better from a third product. So like Gage said, I think you have to take a hit for the first year or two, but as you prove out and you keep writing good business, it's not about writing revenue anymore. It's about writing the right business, and I think if you get that right, the economics improve, and then it opens up all sorts of doors, captives, all sorts of opportunities where the economics get far, far better than an MGA.
Yeah, so the legal setup. So we have a Delaware C Corp that owns an LLC beneath it, and that is the entity that's licensed, as well as myself as a surplus lines broker agent in all 50 states. So then we went around and licensed that LLC everywhere. From a paper perspective, then Everspan is our fronting carrier, and so they're the licensed insurance carrier on each and every one of our policies. And there's a panel of 6 reinsurers behind them, so they take a good chunk of that risk as a hybrid front, and then it's kind of split up 10, 15, 20, 25% depending on the carrier behind them. So good diversified panel, great support from Everspan, and that's about it.
Did you have to come up with that arrangement, or is Everspan, the reinsurance sitting behind? Is that something that they wanted, or they came up with, or is this something you had to go and figure out yourself?
So we have a reinsurance broker that was there to both help us find Everspan in the first place, and then take that and go out to the reinsurance market and help place that. And I think that's pretty standard among MGAs. I don't think we did anything different per se in that perspective, but I would. At the time, there was something I was thinking about was can we go direct to the reinsurance market, or do we need a broker? I would highly recommend that you get a very capable broker. They were invaluable both in finding partners, but then there's a lot of contracts and stuff behind the scenes that they took care of for us. So reinsurance broker, thumbs up.
This is awesome. I feel like I'm getting a crash course on how to start an MG. Any other questions? Yes, Heather.
I heard the comment about the people being important. Is there any element of your culture that you think contributes to your ability to work well together and continue to grow
I think it's really important you have an English accent. I think that really helps. I'm a huge believer in culture is the difference between good and great. It's like it's a personal mission of mine. And when we kind of set Poland up, the thing that I said is I'm only going to do this if we're not going to be a standard shared service center running at 30% attrition, right? Because it just becomes a body shop. And we ran that center for 5 years at like 7% attrition, which is unheard of in the world of shared services and outsourced shared services. So, and the way we did that was just building great culture. And that for me is not just pinning some, it's the same thing you hear at every conference. Right? I can give you the words authenticity. I can give you the words empowerment. I can give you the words fun. And like every company here has got those words written on their wall or somewhere on a website or an intranet, and they really mean it. But I think the difference is actually having people that live it and do it and being open. And it's really important to me that people when I chatted to Gage, that he really believed it and it wasn't just some words. So I think finding people, there's a lot of people out there that want to work in areas that are empowering. We don't have an expense policy. I have no interest in writing an expense policy. If you're going to abuse our expense policy, then don't come work for us. Like if it really means a lot for you to abuse our expense policy, go work somewhere else. We just trust you to be good people and do good things, and that's how I want it work. Now that does mean that you're going to get it wrong, and the problem is if you build rules around the 2-3% that are going to abuse your trust, then you're just disengaging the 97% that work for you. So you have to you have to get the right 97% and deal with the 2 or 3%, and that's how you build great cultures. And if you build a great culture, the rest will follow. Like all this tech stuff, you can do it with the right partners like Socotra, but if you build a great culture, you attract the good talent follows other good talent, and you end up with a sustainable company. It's the opposite of a vicious circle, but I can't think of the other word that goes with vicious, so I'll stop there. But yeah, flywheel. Yeah, flywheel. Yeah. So I firmly believe that, and I've been fortunate in my life to work for it's only one company that people still look back on today, got to 2,500 people. And if you meet anybody that worked for that company at 2,500 people, they will all say, that was the best company I worked for. It felt like a family. It was a great company. And I was fortunate to start my career there. And certainly I feel very passionate about it, as you can tell by my tone of voice and body language as soon as you ask the question.
And that's one of the places where Adrian and I really connected. To go back to something I said at the very beginning, I decided to build a company. And so the very first thing I did before I even started thinking about an idea was, what's the culture of that company? So I actually created a 30-slide deck for that I still use to this day to onboard all of our new employees. And
I must get it down to 4, though. I will get it to 4 slides by the end.
Yeah, there's some synthesis of it on the website and stuff like that. But it's that important, right? If you're going to build something great, you need to build it from that strong foundation. You need to know what you stand for, what you care about, and then what you're looking for in the people that you want to bring on the journey with you. So that, to me, was more even important than what I was going to do with this company, was how we were going to treat each other and how we were going to live our values.
That's awesome. You don't really hear about that when you're talking about insurance, and so thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being on this panel today. If there's no other questions, I think we can close out this Thursday afternoon. Thank you guys so much for being on this panel.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Irene.